Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Roslyn Hill Chapel, a Unitarian community in Hampstead in North London. We are a spiritual home for open minds. Whoever and however you are this morning, there is a space for you here. And even though we aren't together physically, this is a chance to take some time out to reconnect with yourself, with others, and with that which you hold to be of greatest worth. I'm James Chirian Kandith, one of the chapel elders, who together have composed the service today. As we continue with our monthly theme of healing, in this service we will consider how, as individuals and in our communities, we can find the resources we need to be resilient and maintain hope in challenging times. Please stay online and join us for tea and conversation at midday. If you haven't already, you can sign up to weekly email updates via our chapel website for more information on all our activities. We will begin with a prelude from John Evans, after which Hilary Ratna will light the chalice.
Good morning. I light this chalice today in celebration of the spirit of life. May we accept each day as a precious gift and strive to make it a blessing to ourselves and to others.
Sally Somerville now introduces a poem about life in lockdown.
Good morning. When lockdown's first phase began, I was halfway through, sewing a summer weight jacket, knitting a winter sweater, planning my teaching, and the million other activities which normally crowd in and keep me interested in life. The prospect of not having the usual structure to fill my time felt like something I would struggle with, and I continue to struggle. I decided to grasp the nettle. While lockdown lasted, I would actually sort out our boxes and boxes of photographs, my clothes, my sheet music, the garden shed, the cupboard under the sink, etc. I would go on a diet, practice singing every day, do my knee exercises, which I neglect, at least 3 times a day, write letters, catch up. You get the idea. The reality is that I'm surviving with the help of family and friends, radio and TV, YouTube and Zoom, and our beloved chapel community. Also, though many of my usual pursuits have largely slowed down or stopped, my writing habit has maintained itself. Last week, I bumped into a friend in the supermarket car park, and as we chatted through our masks and at the prescribed distance apart, we agreed that though the news of a possible rolling out of the vaccines helps quite a bit, the effects of COVID-19 on life are profound. It has robbed us of structure and destroyed contact with children, important to both of us. Worst of all, it had robbed me of optimism. What it has given to so many of us is time. And during that time, I've been writing my lockdown refrain. So here it is. Lockdown refrain. We have time to ourselves, as we've so often wanted, for jokes and for satire, for laughter and songs. We have time for reflection and days to forgive ourselves, clean up our memories and choose to forget or remember, to plan and complete and begin to be healthy or not, start the diet and exercise, change our old ways so that we have the time to spend on neglected pastimes and ambitions, to draw and to sculpt, and for reading or writing a song or a book, or for learning a language and conquering difference, protecting our world, for savoring joys and for living our lives and for loving our loved ones. Now we have the time in this most busy time.
Our hymn today is number 60 in the Hymns for Living, Trust in Life. If you know the words, you can sing it at home as John plays. Now for something a bit different and unexpected from Ken Levy.
Just look at you, how you'll deride someone who's letting down the side. My head is pounding, my heart is bleeding. I'm sorry, I couldn't find a reading. T.S. Eliot, perhaps a poem? Too esoteric, my brain slowing. Readings, others' words you swallow. The vessel can be somewhat hollow. Jean-Paul Sartre I did try, but on a man you can't rely who traded on de Beauvoir's looks. I bet you she wrote half his books. I never thought that in this church I'd be left standing in the lurch. My intellect I'd always shout out. I haven't got one, and now you've found out. Hermann Hesse came up next, but Steppenwolf makes me feel vexed. Sid and Arthur, the glass bead game, every flaming book's the same. At last then, folks, I've been laid bare, no words to pull out of the air, or rather books off my bookcase. You've had the lot, I'm in disgrace. But just one moment, when things get hard, a place to go. It's called the Bard. I'll impress you now with lines from Hamlet. I'm off the hook as near as damn it. Then next a bombshell to impress you more. Polonius was stabbed by Elsinore.
Thank you, Ken. Margaret Perry will now share a prayer, after which John will play music for a time of reflection.
A prayer particularly suitable for uncertain times. I asked for strength, and God gave me difficulties to make me strong. I asked for wisdom, and God gave me problems to solve. I asked for prosperity, and God gave me a brain and brawn to work. I asked for courage, and God gave me danger to overcome. I asked for love, and God gave me troubled people to help. I asked for favors, and God gave me opportunities. I received nothing I wanted, but I received everything I needed.
Thank you, John. Three of us, Margaret, me, and Hilary, will now share short reflections on hope and resilience. How to, in the words of the song, keep on keeping on. Margaret will speak first.
I'm inspired by the story of Lady Seton. She was a member of our Roslyn Hill congregation at the time of the greatest crisis in the mid-20th century. Unlike now, the threat at that time was visible and audible. Nightly random bombing raids of London happened during World War II, and many congregation members had escaped to the country. The plaque on the wall by the chapel entrance commemorates Lady Seton's generosity. There, we learn of her bequest, a gift of a Hampstead house, which enabled a new organ to be installed in the 1990s. But it is in Ruth Roundtree's published history of the chapel where I read about Lady Seton's inspiring spiritual response to life in wartime North London. As mentioned, average attendance at the chapel was hugely reduced. Large numbers of people had moved away from Hampstead, but Lady Seton remained in London to help in whatever way then was appropriate. It's through her own eloquent words recorded in Ruth's book that I got to know more about Lady Seton. It's interesting, of interest is her dedication to the National Gardens Guild, which she managed single-handedly at that time and edited its monthly magazine called The Guild Gardener. Her writings there aim to give general encouragement and moral support at a crisis time. She refused to endorse jingoistic, patriotic attitudes. Wartime, she writes, was not only a time of danger to people and property, but was to her a destroyer of souls. These are Lady Seton's words taken from Ruth's book. Quote, "Last night I remembered that God hath not given us the spirit of fear, but of power, of love, and of a sound mind." She was referring to a psalm in those words. She continues, "And that led me on to think, as I often do, of the terrible danger to our souls of letting a feeling of hatred take possession of us." She continues in the Guild Gardener, "It does not hurt the soul to hate evil in the abstract. Indeed, it is right that we should do so. It is the concrete spirit of hatred to fellow men, however odiously wicked they be, which will react on your soul and will in time kill in you the power of love and the sound mind, which alone gives you a right judgment in all things." We know of Lady Seton's legacy through words and music. In hard times as now, we also continue to be mindful of our legacy to future generations at Roslyn Hill Unitarian Chapel.
Thank you, Margaret. How needed hope during this past year? One person whose writing I have found helpful is Baruch Spinoza, the 17th century Dutch philosopher. Of Portuguese Jewish ancestry and deeply versed in Jewish learning, as well as in science and philosophy, he became a rabbi but was excommunicated by the College of Rabbis for his free-thinking and heterodox views. While maintaining the concept of a universal God present throughout creation, he regarded all religion as man-made. An outcast from his community, he pursued his philosophical inquiries while earning his living as a lens maker, speaking out courageously for toleration during the wars in Holland in the 1670s. He left three major philosophical works, the most famous being the posthumous Ethics. And it is from the Ethics that I would like to share this. Hope is an inconstant joy born of the idea of a future or past thing whose outcome we to some extent doubt. Fear is an inconstant sadness born of the idea of a future or past thing whose outcome we to some extent doubt. If the element of doubt is removed from these emotions, hope becomes confidence and fear becomes despair. There is neither hope that is without fear, nor fear that is without hope. And the more we endeavor to be guided by reason, the less do we depend on hope. We endeavor to free ourselves from fear, and as far as we can, to dominate fortune. That hope and fear are interdependent is one of Spinoza's deepest insights. The hope-fear dyad arises through our ignorance of the forces that determine our lives. Fear can be paralyzing. The more ignorant we are of these forces, the more we are at the mercy of hope and fear. Never in living memory have people all over the world realized this as during the current global pandemic, as governments, scientists, and each one of us seek to deal with what we don't know about COVID-19. Spinoza affords another important insight that is relevant to the pandemic, that we need to understand that we are a part of nature and that our well-being depends on respecting and sustaining the complex interdependencies of all human and non-human life. So long as in our egoism we imagine ourselves as privileged beings separate from nature, we lack the knowledge of our true nature and context. So what I take from Spinoza is that to live as well as we can is a matter of learning to manage the relationship between hope and fear in order to sustain life. To lack hope is to render oneself incapable, and as in the past, it is hope informed by reason and understanding that will ultimately get humanity through our present predicament.
Joan Didion begins her book, The Year of Magical Thinking, with this passage. Life changes fast. Life changes in the instant. You sit down to dinner and life as you know it ends. The question of self-pity. Life as we know it changed in March this year, and things have never been the same since. We live within limits that were unimaginable a year ago and have adjusted with varying amounts of difficulty. Some of us know people who have contracted COVID-19, and not all of those people have survived. If no one among our friends and family has become ill, we are grateful and cross our fingers that it stays that way. But our safety and well-being feel precarious. That sense of precariousness we so often run away from, as who wants to be anticipating loss? Loss is all around us these days. Personal losses of friends or relatives, the daily recitation of national and global deaths from COVID, those from natural disasters. Loss of jobs and livelihoods are in the daily news. For us these days, there's also what Reverend Vanessa Southern calls ambiguous loss. Ambiguous loss would include a diminished sense of stability and security, the separation from loved ones, the loss of cherished routines, the loss of the ability to plan. It would include all the ways that the pandemic has upended our self-care and coping skills, maybe even started to challenge our sense of ourselves or who we knew ourselves to be. And with no end date yet published and no sense of what world we will return to, it's hard to know what to grieve for. So what is most painful about these days for you? How would you name that loss? What do you mourn? What is it you yearn to have back that was taken from you in this? And maybe ask what piece of what was lost you still have a hold of. So if you lost connection, are you finding new ways to connect? Maybe less satisfying, but better than being entirely cut off from those you love. If you mourn a sense of control over your life, what control do you still have? What choices can you make about who it is you become? We can see our choices differently too. We can start to call friends in honor of the love of the connection we have with them instead of out of despair. We can plan socially distant walks with masks on in honor of our newly heightened recognition of the fragility of life. And we can remember our gratitude. Remind yourself, your home is the dream of the homeless. Your job is the dream of the unemployed. Your health is the dream of the sick. And your smile and kind words can banish gloom. May the spirit of life fill us all with hope and strengthen our resilience. Amen.
Thank you, Hilary. I end this service with some words inspired by the Unitarian theologian Rebecca Parker. No matter how weak or strong, hopeful or hopeless we feel, we can all make a difference for the good. Be hopeful, be strong, be connected, and each day act so that our world may be a little more whole. Thank you and keep well.